I will be putting the agenda in the chat too, once we gain a little bit more folks. Good to see some faces that we saw today at 10. I'm gonna ask the same question that I asked there. Is anyone super excited about anything this summer coming up? I, for one, am very excited to watch the Olympics. I think it's going to be a really fun time.
I'm going to see Taylor Swift in London. I'm pretty
Okay, so
excited
you
about that.
win. You win.
I don't know how that happened, but somehow my sister does magical things when she's trying to get tickets to concerts. So
It's amazing.
I'm pretty
I'm
excited.
so jealous.
There's an article in today's Globe about what people are willing to pay in terms of their lodging and the extras in London to attend Taylor Swift.
We were going anyway, so we're not going because she's there. We were going and she happens to be there. So
I think she's a nexus of tourism.
Sure.
I hear that it's like people think it's cheaper to like buy tickets to Europe and see her there than to buy her concert tickets here.
Is that including all the travel costs associated with that?
That's what I'm hearing. I have no idea. That would be nuts.
So we're just waiting on a couple more folks here. Gotta make sure everyone, it's been a day of meetings, so I'm sure everyone is grabbing something to eat, grabbing a drink. So other than Sarah, who kind of wins the summer plans, anyone else has anything fun going on this summer?
We're gearing up for a move in 3 weeks, so packing and
That's exciting.
We're really
That's so
excited.
exciting.
But a new house is fun.
Yes.
The end result will be. Yeah, I just got a bunch of long weekends this summer. Looking forward to like just time in New England, Adirondacks, Maine.
Nothing better. This is when New Englanders thrive, I think.
Everybody wants to come here.
Yeah. See.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing, Addison?
We are doing good. We're a little low on attendance right now, so we might want to just stall a little bit more, but happy to jump in, knowing that we have a lot of things on the agenda.
Yeah, why don't we, I think Kelly might need some TA there. Why don't we ask those who are here to put their name, title, and organization in the chat while we wait for a few others to join. Very awesome legislative representation. Very happy to see you, Rep. Barber. Thank you for being here. And Robin Kennedy's office, well represented by Carol Miyanoyama. Thank you for being here. And what about the participants outside the panelists? Addison, how are we doing over there?
We have three. I'm trying to get Rep Peace on this side of things. So I just sent him our invite, the panelist invite. Okay. I think we're good to go, Commissioner.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, members of the Workforce Advisory. Thank you so much for joining us today. You'll recall that at our last quarterly meeting, we had a joint meeting of the full advisory committee and the Workforce Advisory Committee to focus on the agency's required state plan that'll be submitted to our federal oversight agency, the Office of Child Care, which is a requirement of any of the state agencies that are the administrators of the Child Care and Development Fund. So going to give you a quick update on where we are on that, although we'll be going into great detail of that this morning. We did with our advisory group and also at the board meeting next Wednesday. A few other updates I'll share with you, including talking about where we are in the FY25 budget. So apologies for those of you who were on this morning. It'll be a repeat. But all three budget proposals are out and have fantastic investments for early education and care and for EEC, but also are quite different and somewhat complicated. So we'll spend a couple minutes walking through sort of where we are in the budget process and what the various proposals look like right now for the department and the broader field. And then the primary part of the meeting, we really want to dig back into updating you on where we are and some key workforce initiative strategies. We are going to basically present to you today what we presented at our April board meeting. We were at Holyoke Community College for that meeting, which was awesome. And we had an opportunity to kind of update folks on the key initiatives happening at the department, and there's been progress in the last 2 months. So we'll basically be updating you on those key initiatives, but current state of those. So, okay, with that, let me start with some agency updates. So the first thing I wanted to share, many of you are aware we reprocured our child care financial assistance contracts. These are contracts that provide services for families through dedicated purchasing at providers across the Commonwealth, both for our income eligible population as well as our priority populations, which are families involved with the Department of Children and Families, families experiencing homelessness, and our young parent population. Those services have not been reprocured in 15 years. So I really want to recognize the work of the team here in getting that RFR out. We received 180 proposals on the due date of May 16th. 80 around our priority populations and about 100 for our income eligible. And we are in the intensive review process now. We have about 85 folks from the agency and from other agencies helping us. And we are on track for hopefully contracts in the fall. That's our plan through the process, announcing awards in July, at some point in July. The one thing I wanted to mention about this contract, which is different than the last one, is that we included the ability for us to reopen the contract on an annual basis or as needed by the agency. So we'll be definitely carefully paying attention to age groups and populations and geography as we make awards. And should there be additional funding or areas of the state that aren't covered or populations we want to make sure we're serving or age groups, we have the opportunity through this procurement to reopen the bid next year, should there be an opportunity or a need to do that. So that's going to be a real benefit, I think, to the field and to the agency to be able to have that feature. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we have successfully, after a year of meeting and negotiation, successfully negotiated a contract with SEIU 509, which represents the family child care providers who take child care financial assistance. So the reason I wanted to share that is because we, as you know, implemented a large $65 million rate increase in this current year with the support of the board and many others. And until we had that contract negotiated, we were not able to implement the family child care rate increase. The center-based increase went out, I think, in February and March. And we anticipate now that the contract has been negotiated. I signed the MOU yesterday. That we'll be able to get the family childcare rate increases for this fiscal year out by the end of June. And they are retroactive to July 1 of last year. So really happy that we're going to be able to move those rate increases out and along. We do have a board meeting next week on Wednesday. It's here in Boston at our Milk Street offices. We'll be talking at that meeting about the state plan, which I'll give you a quick update in a minute. As well as an update on our regulation reform efforts around our residential and group home regulations. We'll be talking about C3 and planning for FY25. So looking forward to that conversation as well. We'll also be sharing some budget updates as we are with you, with our board. I think those are the updates. Oh, yeah, I think those are the updates I wanted to share with this group for today. As you all know, the federal government requires that EEC develop every 3 years a state plan. We shared in great detail with you last time what was in that state plan. It is not a strategic planning document for the agency, but more of an administrative task for us to be able to communicate our compliance with federal requirements and how we are doing that. So that document, and Tyrese, can you just put the link to the website with the documents if anyone wants to take a look at it? We've been through a public engagement process, including stopping through here last time, as well as a public hearing, and we will be presenting that state plan for consideration by the board at our meeting on Wednesday. We hope that they will vote to support our submission of that plan to the federal government. Again, it is not take the place of our own strategic planning efforts. It is really just a communication of what the work is that's underway at the agency. I did also want to mention, and we'll be talking this at the board meeting, that the federal government, the Office of Child Care, did just issue a final rule, and that is their policy-making mechanism for directing the agencies that administer the Child Care and Development Fund sort of new requirements. And so we'll be talking about some of those new requirements, but in general, I wanted to say that we are enjoying a great deal of alignment with our federal partners. So they've issued a federal rule that is really directing the agencies to make access more access easier for families, access easier for providers, making sure we're providing stability and continuity for families who are being served, addressing issues of affordability and equity within our systems. And it's terrific to have such alignment. And much of the work that we've done over the last couple of years around childcare financial assistance really aligns with the direction the federal government wants us to go in. So we're in a good shape in terms of a number of their new requirements. And then there are a couple areas where we still have work to do. So for example, the federal government is going to be requiring all states that are offering childcare financial assistance that are sliding fee scale caps at 7% of families' income. That's going to take some additional work. And the other really good change the federal government that we already had planned was around making prospective payments around childcare financial assistance. So right now we pay reimbursement sometimes up to 6 weeks after a service has been delivered, which can cause a pretty big hardship. So the federal government is going to be requiring that states do prospective payments going forward, which is really much more how the private childcare market works. And so anything that has the experience for our families to be like any other family, we are supportive of. But that will require some technology changes and system efforts on our part. So if you're interested in more of that, please tune into the board meeting. We'll be talking about the state plan. We'll be talking about the final rule. And it'll be an important part of sort of how we plan some key initiatives for the next several years. Tyrese, what did I forget?
You got it all.
All right.
Wait, you did forget something though. A new person.
Oh, go ahead.
So I'm happy to share that EEC has welcomed our first family engagement manager, Aisha Rodriguez. She has joined us. She might be a familiar face to some of you. She has joined us from Horizons for Children. I'm just going to have Aisha give a quick wave and say hello to everyone.
Hi, everybody. So happy to be on the team. I'm so happy to be here at EC. I'm only a few weeks in, so I'm still having a lot of great conversations. You may hear me even reach out to you to get some perspective or thoughts on some of the work that's coming up. And I look forward to working with you guys.
We are very thrilled to be welcoming Aisha to the team, the agency's first ever family engagement manager. So Aisha's position is actually funded through the Preschool Development Grant. And one of the key tasks that is on Aisha's long list of to-dos is to be creating a family advisory committee. So we have the advisory committee, we have the workforce advisory, and we're going to have an opportunity now to really bring the family voice into the work we do in a more formal way. So Aisha, we're really looking forward to supporting you and are so glad that you're here with us now. Okay, and we are going to move now into budget updates. So Addison, do you want to drive the slides? And you're going to start recording us too?
I've already started, Commissioner.
Okay, all right.
You're being recorded. Okay.
All right. So again, for those of you here this morning at our advisory board, I'll apologize for the repeat, but the budget is big and complicated enough that perhaps it's worth two rounds. And for those of you who didn't get to hear it, just a quick reminder on the state budget process, which really is permanent. It continues throughout the year. It just depends who's working on it at what time. So at the current moment, we're down there in the red, April and May, and moving into the June part of the budget process. So the governor released her budget in January. The Senate and the House have both released their budget now. I understand a conference committee has been named and perhaps has already met or is starting to meet this week. So that conference committee will discuss the differences between the House and the Senate version of the budget, which we'll review a little bit in a minute, and come out with a final budget that they will send to the governor for her review. All right. And we hope we'll have a budget by July 1st. It's always the goal and the hope. So as I mentioned, all three proposals, the governor's budget, the House budget, and the Senate budget, make really incredible and significant investments in early education and care. And in the agency, we are so incredibly grateful for the support across all three branches of government, bringing in the agency at about $1.55 billion. And there are variances among the three versions of the budget. So we will definitely be a significant part of discussion at the conference committee in terms of discussing various line item differences and language differences between the House and the Senate version. But across some of our key priorities, which include childcare, financial assistance, and family engagement, Commonwealth Cares for Children, and our workforce and program supports, there are significant ongoing and new investments. So I'm going to hit, we will share these slides after the board, after this meeting with all of you. So you'll have them in detail. And then we'll probably spend a little more time at the board meeting if there's additions you want. But I'm going to breeze through three slides that touch on each of these three areas, and then I'm going to conclude by just walking through a little bit of what's different between the Senate and the House. Before we move on to those, I just want to say that one of the things that makes this year so complicated is that and wonderful, is that funding for our line items is coming from a number of different sources. So from general funds, from the fair share revenues, as well as from a high quality early education and care trust that was set up. So the line items are somewhat complicated because they follow kind of the different funding sources as you look at the budget. So what we've tried to do is kind of consolidate so that we can show you, total funding for for each of the different programs, even if funding is coming from different line items. So we'll walk through a little bit of both of those and then kind of summarize where things land between the two versions. Okay. So quick highlight of some of the things across the three different proposals, the governor's, the House, and the Senate, around childcare financial assistance and family access. So this is including funding for the CCR&Rs, our childcare financial assistance line items, both DCF and DTA related, as well as income eligible. This is also where you see some of the increases, and I'll walk through what's kind of a complicated set of the way it's funded, but the rate increases, and that includes annualization of the 65 million from this year, as well as new rate increases of 20 million for next fiscal year. This also includes grants to Head Start programs, funding for our CFC, Parent Child Plus, and Reach Out and Read. Okay. I'll spend a couple minutes on Commonwealth Cares for Children, which has been one of the agency's top priorities, and for this administration, as well as both branches of the legislature. So the good news, amazing news, is that all three versions of the budget have 475 million to continue funding at the same level the Commonwealth Cares for Children. This continues to set Massachusetts apart from other states. As most states saw the sunsetting of these federal funds, the state stepped up with incredible support from the legislature to continue fully funding this program through state funding sources. Some states have maintained a portion or some of it, but I believe we're the only state that's continued full funding. As you can see here, the different versions of the budget fund the Commonwealth Cares for Children from different sources, which is why it looks a little complicated when you look at the budget, but when you add it all up, they all equal 475 million, which is fantastic. For those of you who are following the budget closely, you'll probably already be aware that there are fairly significant language differences among the three versions, and lots of outside section language, which codifies the program, and on the Senate side picks up a lot on the early education and care bill language and puts that into outside section. So that will certainly be part of the conversation at the conference committee about what the final language will be that will be providing the agency direction on the implementation of C3 going into FY25. Okay. And then our workforce and program support line item. So that top line item, which is quality improvement, is a large item. Then it actually includes funding for all of our licensing and quality support staff, as well as in a number of other areas. You can see that CPPI was supported with a fairly significant expansion in both the governor's budget, as well as in the Senate. Career pathways funded in the governor and the House budget, but not included as a line item at EEC in the Senate budget. Although it may be included elsewhere in terms of the Senate's approach to free community college in different parts. So I think probably people here who know more about that than I do, who might be able to share. All right, I'm just going to walk through kind of highlights of the differences between the Senate and the House versions of the budget that we see, and then we'll open it up for conversation and questions or corrections for those of you who may know more than I do and want to share. So again, really excited and grateful for 475 million in both versions for our C3 program. Because it's funded across different items, it's hard to see, but we were able to understand that both the House and the Senate version includes 65 million for annualization of rates that were implemented this year, plus an additional 20 million for a new rate increase for fiscal 25. In terms of access, and which is actually childcare financial assistance vouchers, as well as contract funding, the House side includes about 28 million, so 20 million within our caseload accounts, and then an $8 million earmark specifically for early education and care staff. On the Senate side, 80 million across our accounts for increasing access for families. The governor's budget, you may recall, included 75 million, and we are really hoping to have as much funding as possible to be able to continue to serve the number of families we've enrolled this year and continue to expand access, particularly for our early education and care staff, as that has shown to be a very important support, both for workforce recruitment as well as access for families. Again, you can see the CPPI increase supported in the Senate, aligning with the governor's budget. Different funding levels to expand the Head Start state supplemental grant between the House and the Senate version. Again, career pathways maintained as is a line item within EEC at the House, but not on the Senate side. The Senate does include a new line item for employer-sponsored childcare pilot at 2.5 million, and also calls out and supports 6 million for our summer step up, which is a learning loss program for young children during the summer. And then the House budget included 2 new earmarks, actually within our administrative account, 10 million for a new higher education scholarship program and 10 million for a new loan forgiveness program. So those kind of sum up at a very high level some of the key investments in each of the versions, and some of the variation between the 2 House and Senate versions that will be subject to the conference committee. All right, why don't we stop sharing there, Addison? And I'll just turn to the EEC team for a second. So Addison or Catherine, did I miss anything we should have hit on or highlighted in terms of the budget proposals and the complicated? Thought I saw Catherine.
I'm here.
Oh, you are here, yeah.
No, I don't think so. If anybody has any questions, like the commissioner said, they're similar but not. And the good news is we are, all 3 versions fund EEC at around $1.55 billion. And when you're talking about over $1 billion, the 2 decimal points really matter.
They do indeed.
And I know that we have a lot of legislative partners here. So again, I just want to echo the commissioner's thanks and appreciation for that as well.
Yeah. So invite questions, comments, corrections or additions from our legislative colleagues. Okay. No further questions on the budget for now? We did have a lively discussion about it this morning. Go ahead, Jessica.
Commissioner, thank you
How
so
are
much for amazing. So I just have follow-up in regards to 2 things. So thank you so much for the information and all the work that you and your team are doing. I really do appreciate it. So as a family child care owner, some of my thinking right now is it sounds like 2024, 2025 sounds great, but then sounds like a lot of money has been towards starting things. So I'm just wondering, what is the strategic plan for looking like for 2026, considering what we're doing is a lot of foundational work right now. And then my second question, since there was changes created to C3 at the end of the rollout, and I actually had to calculate kind of where our deficit looked like as an example. So we are a family child care program that is private. We're in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So because of the changes, we actually lost about a month worth of rent that we could pay, or 2 payrolls. So that is something that I worry about if we continue to, serve all these programs, start all these employment opportunities, and then 2026 hits and the legislation, the Senate and the House are no longer agreeing with all of these millions of dollars, which we're so grateful for. But I'm just wondering, like, what is the legislation piece that we're putting in place to make sure these funds stay continuous to the workforce? So that's a question. And then just kind of any feedback, conversation about thinking about how to make sure that strategically funds are not just being geared towards public programs and leaving thousands of private programs out of the rollout of funds, that we also need to keep our small businesses open. And I'm sorry, I'm transitioning from the program, so.
Yeah, I bet is it nap time there. So we appreciate you taking the time out to be with us, Jess. So let me take your first question around strategic planning. So the agency is statutorily required to do a strategic planning process and then create a 5-year strategic plan every 5 years. We're in the last year of our last strategic plan. So this fall, we're going to start initiating the planning process for what will be for our next 5-year strategic plan, which will go from 26 through 2030. And we will be fully engaging all of our folks here in that. And I think you're absolutely right in your observation that we've been doing a lot of foundational work, the cost of care, regulatory reforms, and that work will need to continue in terms of, implementation and adoption, but then there'll be new work that we'll definitely want to initiate as part of that process. So we're going to look forward to engaging with all of you as that process kind of unfolds. On the C3 side, I would say, and again, legislative colleagues are here, all 3 versions of the budget contemplate the continuation of C3. And a lot of the outside section language or the language that was included in both versions of the budget contemplate kind of codifying C3 in the long run as a program. But they also reflect, and so does the agency's work, this transition moment or inflection point that I think we're at in this program, where we're really moving from this COVID era stabilization into something much more sustainable and consistent in terms of operations. And clearly the agency is really committed to making sure we don't have what happened this year, which is sort of late year budget reductions, really as a result of oversubscription and the success of the program. It really worked. We had more programs open, we had more teachers hired, and as a result of that, the program exceeded its appropriation, or would have exceeded its appropriation had we not taken those unfortunate late year budget reductions. So a lot of the contemplating and work that the agency's been doing and thinking about 25 next fiscal year and beyond thinks about how to make the program more sustainable and consistent and predictable. It's not the primary subject for this meeting today, so I'm going to put a pin in that if it's okay, but we will be talking about that in great detail or in some level of detail on Wednesday at the board meeting. I know it's probably really hard for you to be able to tune into that, Jess, in the middle of the workday, but it will be recorded and the slides will be available. So once you've had a chance to see what's presented at the board meeting and take a look at the slides, I'm happy to set up time to follow up to talk about where at least the agency is intending to head. And again, this is a program that has broad-based support from the legislature, from the agency, and from the administration. So it will be a discussion among all of us about the future of the program and the best way to design it to ensure it's maximizing stability for programs, reducing costs for families, and also sustainable in the longer term. So we recognize there's work to be done there, but it's pretty exciting to be in an opportunity to be able to do that work and not catching up on missed funding like a lot of other states are. So I know that's not a complete answer, but if we can hold for after the board meeting, I'd be happy to have a longer conversation. Okay. Any other questions on budget or things we didn't touch on in the budget? Rep Peace, yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna, and thank you, Commissioner. I was just gonna say, I think you absolutely hit it spot on that the legislature and the governor's office are fully behind moving this forward. I mean, during the COVID issue problem, obviously it just showed how important the early child care is, and I think they took that as a priority, and you can see that. And I think also, and they're using the millionaire's tax. They have done a really good job of splitting that between transportation and education. So hopefully that'll go in, but nobody knows what the future and revenue is going to be, but we hope it continues on where we can support these programs.
Yeah, and I can't thank you enough, Representative, and I know Representative Barber and Carol from Senator Kennedy's office. Just the amount of support we have felt from the legislature in terms of C3, but across our other programs too has been remarkable. It's an incredible time to be working in early education and care, and I know we have so much work to do, but we're starting from a pretty incredible place with all the proposals being 1.55 billion. We're starting from a really strong place of support and commitment of resources. So thank you. Okay, with that, if there aren't other comments, happy to invite others. I'm going to turn it over to our workforce team to talk about all the incredible work they've been doing to try and keep our system growing.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, no, I think, and you can go to, yeah, there we go. We'll start here. And we have been spending a great deal of time focusing on the workforce and the supports that we're developing for the workforce. And I don't think I really need to say this to this group, but I will call out, it's out of a recognition that the workforce is really the cornerstone of program quality. Everything that happens is for children and families drives from the quality of the interactions and the teaching and learning that's happening in the FCC home and in the classrooms and center-based programs. So everything that we're doing to support the workforce is also in service of quality. And I think our feeling is that it's really important that we focus in on this foundational piece while also thinking about quality in broad terms. So we're going to talk about a number of strategic initiatives that are in flight right now. And again, these map to this sort of framework that we have on the left-hand side of the screen of the key areas of work that need to be in place to build a robust workforce through strong professional pathways and opportunities. If you sort of start at the top of that circle and thinking about the ways in which we're working on supporting access to ongoing professional learning, education, higher education, and preparation programs, one really core component of our work is our EEC learning management system. I think people are familiar with that, that's where you go to take the EEC Essentials, but we're really working on building out that system and also recognize that it plays a very important role, not just in providing access to asynchronous courses, but also includes registration, tracking, and verification functions that are really critical to our management of the system as a whole. We're also, this is the third one down, but we're also working on a number of opportunities that support access to higher education, and I'll let Sarah and Ellen talk about those. At the same time, we're thinking about the workforce pipeline and the ways in which we're supporting both recruitment and movement through a professional pathway for educators. And we've talked a fair amount about the work that has been done to understand what's happening for apprenticeships in the state. And we're going to provide an update both on what we've learned and what we're thinking about in terms of next steps for that work. And then finally, on the left-hand side, and I'm skipping over stable employees and competitive compensation because a lot of that work is really focused in on the work that we're doing through C3, which the commissioner referenced in her remarks, and we will be talking about at the board meeting, but we're not focusing on today. But the credential and the certification processes that we currently have in place are really essential to provide the roadmap and the expectations to define the pathways. And we will also be providing an update on where we are with that work. You can go to the next slide, and I believe I'm turning it over to Pam. Yep.
Hi, folks. How's everybody? So I want to talk about the Strong Start Learning Management System. I think everybody at this point is pretty familiar with what a learning management system is. On our particular learning management system, we have two sort of groups of courses. So we have courses that are self-paced courses. They're exactly what they sound like. They're asynchronous. People can take it in their own time, sign up, be very independent. They can take it in small increments. It will save their place a la Netflix if they want to take it in 10-minute increments or sit down and take larger chunks. That's either way, it's up to them. It also allows very large numbers of educators to take courses. To give you some context, for our first package of EEC Essentials, the 1.0 version, we had over 100,000 people complete that package. So it allows for significantly large numbers of educators. And it also allows for courses in languages other than English. So we typically package our courses in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and in simplified Chinese. So we're also listing funded instructor-led courses. So those are exactly what they sound like, courses that are either led by an instructor in person or via webinar, Zoom, GoToMeeting, Teams, etc., and or a hybrid of both. A lot of the courses that our professional development centers are offering are a hybrid of both of those things. So obviously that allows for interaction with instructors and facilitators and their colleagues and peers, but it's definitely limited by the capacity of the instructor and sometimes the location. So some things to pay attention to in an LMS system: it can track the courses. So it's got the capacities to support automated registration, both for asynchronous and synchronous instructor-led courses. But it's also tracking course activity, educator progress. Educators can see their progress through a course. We can see their progress through a course. It's tracking their learning history. It allows us to report on all functions of all of those things and demographics of the people that are completing it. And pretty important to pay attention to in terms of the future credential verification. So self-paced courses are verified automatically upon completion. And for instructor-led courses, facilitators simply come back and indicate when the course is complete that people have completed the requirements, attended, completed assignments, et cetera, et cetera. So this is really going to ease the burden of verifying courses during the future credentialing verification product, because that won't have to be resubmitted for verification. That will all come in. So we can jump to the next slide. Thanks. So our EEC Essential package, which is our core package of courses, has been updated. So these are our federally mandated courses. So our former package, which has now been retired, was significant read, click, next, and it had a very heavy focus on compliance. So we're really excited about the 2.0 package. It was launched about 5 weeks ago now. Both of these were self-paced. This is also self-paced, available in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Simplified Chinese. It's 13 modules. It has a seat time of 12 hours, and we've been paying attention, and it really is coming out at about 12 hours. It has 2 packages, one for center-based and family childcare educators, and one for after school. They're the same, other than the after school package doesn't have the infant focused courses. They simply don't have infants in that program type. And we are working on an annual refresher. Rather than retaking this every year, there will be a refresher that's a little bit different and much shorter. So there's a really significant redesign here and a content upgrade. It's much more engaging. It's narrated, it's closed captioned, it's subtitled, and it has a really heavy practice focus, which is really exciting. And as of a quick check this morning, we have over 8,700 people enrolled in the 2.0, and over 2,200 people already have completed the entire package. So we're really excited about it.
All right. Addison, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So as the Commissioner and Jocelyn mentioned, there has been some success as we think about the stabilization of the workforce over the past year, but we also know there are still significant challenges that are facing the workforce across all program types. Notably, the pipeline for entry into the field is not robust, and we're not seeing a supply of well-qualified educators coming into the field, and there's a lot of challenges in retaining them. What we also know is that educators coming into the field require a lot of support. So as we think about what is needed to support educator success, we have to think from the point of entry into the field, the ways in which we can strategically and adequately support them in entering the field and then staying into the field. So when we were thinking about the ways in which EEC could play a role in addressing some of these challenges, one of the first things that we did was turn to the field and all of our partners out there who are already doing the really important work of supporting educators coming into the field. And I think, you know, what we noticed, I think certainly through work that we've done over the past few years in the family childcare space, is that there's a lot of organizations that had developed really robust training and workforce programs to bring people into the field. But we had not spent a lot of time talking to our center-based partners who were also creating programs to support educators to enter the field. And when we took a look, we recognized that there were unregistered apprenticeship programs, so just basic workforce training programs, but also registered apprenticeship programs emerging as a really promising strategy. So in an attempt to understand the successes and the challenges and the gaps and areas of opportunity for EEC support, we held a series of convenings, fortunately for us in partnership with Neighborhood Villages, where we really brought together people from across the state who were implementing workforce training programs to understand what their experience had been, identify successes, and also help us to create a set of recommendations on the work that we could do moving forward. And I think what stood out to us is that there was a real need to address the lack of infrastructure that was around all of these organizations that were really working from the ground up to develop and implement programs. So really needing administrative capacity and additional staff capacity to operate those programs. And when we think about the ways that the programs are implemented, a real acknowledgement that flexible funding is needed for programs who are hosting apprentices, who are learning on the job, mentor teachers to help support those novice educators and coming into the field. And so, really just highlighting the wraparound support that is needed in the field. So, as we kind of looked at what we were learning, registered apprenticeship programs certainly came up for us as a key strategy that we needed to think more about. Addison, you can go to the next slide, please. And I think fortunately for us in Massachusetts, there's been a really strong commitment to the expansion of registered apprenticeship programs across different sectors, but including the early education and care and out of school time workforce. So registered apprenticeship programs have some key features that programs have to meet in order to be able to receive funding and be considered registered. So apprentices are engaged in employment with an employer from the beginning, where they are learning on the job. They experience structured on-the-job training with a mentor, related technical instruction through training and/or coursework to build knowledge in the field. They experience wage increases as they participate and kind of advance through that program. And upon completion, receive an industry credential. So the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development has funded a set of registered apprenticeship programs in early childhood, and their current investment is over $1.5 million in fiscal 24, and as a result, bringing in up to 275 new educators into the early education and care workforce, which is really, I think, demonstrating their commitment to partnering with EEC and thinking about how we can work together to address the workforce challenges. And I think one thing that has been really exciting that has emerged over the course of the past year is really the close partnership that EEC has with the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development, but in particular the Department of Apprenticeship Standards. So as we think about the ways that we're going to make adjustments in our credentialing system, really making sure that we're working very, very closely with the Department of Apprenticeship Standards to make sure that programs that are registered reflect industry standards as those things are kind of developing. So we're really, really lucky to have that partnership. And I think one of the things that we also kind of acknowledge as these programs were rolling out is that there are a robust kind of set of activities that are happening, but there's certainly still places where EEC can consider, certainly partnership with EOLWD in the field, but also the ways that we can kind of strategically place ourselves to kind of accelerate and not duplicate what is already existing. I can go to the next slide, please, Addison. So again, as we were thinking about the role that EEC could play, certainly as a funding and workforce investment, we really thought about the funding that we have available for EEC through the Federal Preschool Development Grant to develop a strategy with the goal to expand and accelerate access to supported workforce programs to meet the diverse workforce through a regional strategy that's designed around the needs identified through the stakeholder engagement. So again, we were very deliberate and intentional in making sure that we were putting out resources to address some of the things that were raised to us during that stakeholder engagement. So an RFR is currently posted competitively. We're expecting applications in the coming weeks, and the real focus of that funding is to support intermediary organizations to provide a regional infrastructure for workforce training programs through administrative and coordination support. So as I mentioned, the partnerships with professional development institutions, higher education, employers really need a robust system of support and structure around them in order to operate efficiently and successfully. Those organizations will also be charged with designing and implementing supportive workforce programs, including registered apprenticeship programs for group and school age and family childcare toward the goal of being aligned to the credentials. So we're really seeing this as an opportunity to develop a set of supports that will be available to the field and again aligned to kind of the future of where we're going with our credentialing system. And then finally, flexible funding for center-based programs and new FCC educators to address some of the flexibility and funding that's needed to provide things like mentor stipends, support wage increases, et cetera. So we're really excited about this work. So we're certainly in the early stages of rolling that out and really look forward to working with partners in the coming months on that effort. I think I'm passing it to either Sarah Cian or Ellen next.
To me. You can go to the next slide, please, Addison. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all today. I'm going to just give you a quick overview of the higher education opportunities that we offer to the field and the work that we're doing to improve those opportunities to meet the needs of the workforce. So we have one opportunity called Career Pathways, and this is funding to 15 community colleges and to Urban College of Boston to provide access to higher education coursework. Predominantly, the courses that folks are taking through Career Pathways are the courses that they need for EEC certification, an upcoming foundational certificate, and all of these courses are wrapped around with lots of supports with registration, advising, course scheduling, tutoring, and campus resources. So I often tell people this is the best way to get started, especially if you're looking to start, and one of the best ways to get started if you're looking to start in the workforce, because you can go to any of the 15 community colleges, and your local college will most likely be offering child growth and development at some point coming up. Their child growth and development, as you know, is the gateway course to teacher certification. It's offered at all of the 15 community colleges at least 3 times a year. So there are quite a few opportunities for folks to take that. We've been working on updating our Career Pathways webpage with all of the information that folks need to identify their local community college and get the contact information and step-by-step instructions for how to get started. Once people are in Career Pathways, or not necessarily, but often it's a nice bridge to start in Career Pathways and then move on to the Early Childhood Educator Scholarship that we offer in conjunction with the Department of Higher Education. This opportunity is for those who already know they want to get a degree. You must be matriculated into a degree program to use the Early Childhood Educator Scholarship, and you can use it for your associate's, bachelor's, or master's degree. And we have some important updates to the scholarship this year that I'll go over, but this is really a great way to continue your education towards a degree. We've been working really closely with the Department of Higher Ed and the Massachusetts Association of Community Colleges to really expand and enhance these learning opportunities so that they really work for the fields. I've been doing a bunch of information sessions for the scholarship. The application is now open. Folks can apply. There's information on our website, and you can email me. Next slide, please, Addison. So just a little bit more in depth about the Career Pathways grant. You can see that in FY24, there was close to $10 million that went directly to institutes of higher education for support. So the money goes to the college creates a program. Each college creates a slightly different program offering the same core courses, but sometimes they have different types of support, whether it be an advisor or a mentor, a success coach. They all offer great support, but it's a little bit different at each college. And then educators go to the college for to take their courses and get their textbooks and all the other things they need. And you can see that since Career Pathways was started in 2019, 13,000 educators have been to the community colleges and 1,500 have gone through Urban College. I will say that Urban College specifically supports our educators who speak languages other than English, offering coursework in Spanish, Portuguese, and Mandarin. The community colleges, a lot of them also offer courses in Spanish and some in Portuguese as well. Next slide, please, Addison. So some updates that have been made to the Early Childhood Educator Scholarship this year is we have expanded eligibility to specifically include folks who are working in residential programs licensed by EEC. And jumping down to the last one, we've, in order to really make the scholarship accessible to these folks and our out of school time folks, we've added some new majors to the scholarship. So folks don't necessarily have to go specifically into early childhood, but other related fields. We have simplified the verification process, which is hopefully moving things along faster for approvals. And in order to recognize the full cost of college going up like everything else, we have some new proposed tuition amounts, which are on the next slide, please, Addison. So you can see here that included in our updates that in addition to center-based family childcare and out-of-school time providers, residential and placement providers are now eligible for the scholarship. You can see that psychology, elementary education, special education, social work, and human services have all been added as eligible majors. And you can see that we have some new proposed creditor awards, which are about $150 to $200 more than they were last year. And we expect that these will go into effect for the upcoming fall semester, which folks are applying for now. And I think I'm turning it over to Ellen to continue.
Thanks, Sarah. Yes, thank you so much. And I think one of the things that I just wanted to point out is that from the LMS that Pam talked about, to the apprenticeship that Sarah outlined, and then the work that we've been doing with the colleges and the Department of Higher Ed are all important features to the new credentialing system, as each of my colleagues mentioned in terms of alignment. So some of the other things that I think is has been really fruitful is that in working on the foundational certificate, we've been able to work with the Massachusetts Association of Community Colleges and the 15 colleges in teams of faculty, department chairs, grant directors, and deans. And what we've been working on is really looking at how we communicate to the field their professional development opportunities. So we have come to agreement with the 15 community colleges and have developed a 16 credit foundational certificate that's comprised of 4 core courses and a practicum. And what's nice about that is that in addition to the student learning outcomes, they've worked in alignment with their curriculum, their course titles, the course sequence, and the course content, and have been valuable stakeholders in reviewing the new competencies that we've been developing from entry to level 1 and 2 of the new credentialing system. So those competencies will also be reflected in the courses. Credit for prior learning has been an important piece to this as well. Our educators that are currently in the field to see how the work that they're doing in the field and the courses or certifications that they've taken prior to the new credentialing system have a place in the new levels, and that that there are many entry points to the field. And so credit for prior learning can be realized through some of the colleges and also applied in worksite activities. We've also been working with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed and reviewing the Chapter 74 vocational programs as, again, another point of entry from the work that they've done at the high school to apprenticeship, to foundational certificate and beyond. I think that's it. We can go to the next slide. And this is over to you, Jocelyn.
Thank you, Ellen. So now moving on, an update to where we are with both sort of the current certification, educator certification system, and the transition to the new credentialing system. This slide is an update to one that we showed, I think about a year, maybe a little bit more. Looking at the timelines, yeah, it was a little bit more than a year ago. Mapping out how we plan to move forward in this transition. And we have completed both what we had called out as immediate and short-term goals at that point in time, which included hiring a vendor and getting a vendor on board to support this work and relaunching the certification in an optional manner. And both of those things are well underway at this point in time. And we are now in this last stage where we're looking to define the revised pathways and then engage and socialize some of the decisions that we've made, which will all then support the future launch of a new credential. And you can go to the next slide. I dig into this sort of long-term kind of like where we are section a little bit more fully here. So we are in the process of defining the learning and verification requirements for foundational level. So we're thinking about an entry level and then sort of 2 levels of educator credential levels as well as director level. And also thinking about, sort of how we account for the particular skills needed to run an FCC program. What's really important as part of this process is we are thinking about the transferability of those that have received certification to a credential level. So if you've received your educator certification, you will have a place that will be clearly defined in the new credential system. We're also reviewing all the various professional learning opportunities and higher education opportunities from the perspective of how they align to the competencies that are expected at these levels of the credential so that we understand what's available and then also are identifying where we need to build out and add opportunities so that we can put together packages of accessible and varied professional learning and higher education opportunities that will support advancement on the credential. We're also working on using the credential to sort of map out professional pathways, and this will include beginning the work and thinking about what salary recommendations could look like for different levels of a professional pathway. And finally, we're in the process of developing the requirements that will support a procurement of a new registry to support the documentation and verification of qualifications. So one way that we've been thinking about it, this is a place where we can have sort of the file cabinet for every educator, but also use it as a way in which that verification process happens. So all of this is underway. It won't all be done by the end of June, but we will certainly have drafts of all of these pieces to support communication externally about what we are thinking about and what the timelines will be to move towards an initial launch of some of these opportunities. Can we go to the next slide? One thing that is important to call out and is something that is new and different about the way we're thinking about the credential structure as we start to think about the higher levels of the credential, in particular that go above those 2 teacher levels. We're also thinking about ways in which we're mapping out the role of an educational leader and defining the competencies and skill sets that an educational leader will have, because we recognize that this role really is essential in supporting educators' success. These are the people working in programs and supporting educators across the system that are really supporting that ongoing job embedded learning. And so to do this, we are revising the credential expectations to really reflect an enhanced focus on the role of leadership and supporting educators, driving continuous quality improvements and building opportunities in programs to be ongoing learners while working. We're also thinking across all different program types and where and how the role of an educational leader can fit in. I mean, I think it's relatively easy to think about that in a center-based program, but we also know that there are many family childcare educators out there that are coordinating networks of educators and providing opportunities for FCCs to work together and learn together. Systems also provide this role. So there are, in fact, many opportunities to build that skill set in the FCC space as well. So we are thinking again across all the different program types, and that does also include out of school time, which also has a similarly different set structure in terms of who the workforce is and how they move through the profession. But this also recognizes the need for really targeted supports and enabling conditions for educator professional growth. And we are thinking about the ways in which we support educational leaders just as intentionally as we're supporting the educators themselves. So a few things that are in motion around this particular topic. Building a foundation in early childhood educational leadership support through our professional development centers and the academy that's supporting sort of the statewide professional learning opportunities. Continued investment in the early childhood support organizations, which really provides a very intensive professional support model to educational leaders who are currently working in programs. We're also building out mentor training. We're recognizing, as Sarah mentioned, and as we think about apprenticeships, mentors are really a critical role that also need their own and very focused and particular support. And again, thinking about the role that FCC systems play in supporting family child care educators as well. You go to the next slide. So finally, we also do have the optional certification system is now up and running. It's open across the state for teacher, lead teacher, director 1, and director 2. The minimum hiring requirements do remain in place as well, but what we're finding is there are many educators out who are currently qualified for certification. The minimum hiring requirements do include ongoing professional learning requirements, as well as the hiring requirements that people need to start working. And those are opportunities to continue the work that needs to be done to achieve certification. And I think it's really important to recognize again and call out that for educators who do achieve their certification at this point in time, there will be a place in the new credential system. So our encouragement is to suggest that people continue to pursue certification right now so that when we do transition, everybody has a place in the new credential. And I believe that is the end of our presentation. So I think we can stop sharing and just see if there are questions or comments. So I know people aren't shy when things don't seem quite right. So I really appreciate the silence as lots of validation that I think many things that we're saying resonated, but also do want to make sure that everything is clear. And if there are questions, we have a chance to answer them.
Can you talk about what the stakeholder engagement has looked like and will look like in the process of the credential?
So it's really been very much in the development phase where we are internally trying to map out a starting place for discussion. I think we're very close to getting to something that we can start sharing externally. And then what we are going to look into is developing systems of both sort of like really intense ongoing feedback from the field, as well as broader based, sort of certain points in time where we would say, okay, here's a broad look for those that want to come and hear where we are and give feedback, but aren't available to it for a more intense and ongoing engagement. Jessica?
Thank you so much. That was great. So I just need to advocate. I did see for undergraduate and master's, but I didn't see for PhD. So I was just wondering if I could get that on the radar. We do need a high level of PhD students. I'm currently a PhD student at UMass Boston, and I was only able to go there because of their funding that they did with postmasters and things of that sort. So I just want to make sure that we're also elevating high levels of education. And then also, I'm a part of the Senate at UMass Boston, and they're having literally the same conversation about pathways for their educators, obviously. So I'm just wondering or thinking for as a family child care provider, something that I wish I was able to do was take more business classes when I was an undergraduate student. So just actually not just thinking about children and thinking about you mentioned defining the leadership and educational leadership. Sometimes we have to think outside of leadership and specific to education and just think about entrepreneurship and things like that. So I took a lot of the flexibility of how we're structuring classes needs to be also taken into account. So if we're only requiring childcare, then there's no space for business or other outside things that family childcare providers may need or prefer if they're going to continue to continue their education.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Yeah, no, and I want to respond to that last part because I realized I didn't call this piece of our thinking out as much, but in thinking about how we're supporting both directors and family childcare educators, we are thinking about both the administrative knowledge and skills that are needed, and particularly for FCC educators, the business skills. So we do currently have a business training that has been very popular and will, I think, support some of that skill set as well that we would call out probably through an endorsement process. We're also learning the needs are slightly different for FCC educators and center-based leaders. So, sort of trying to be responsive to those differences as well and not have a one-size-fits-all set of expectations.
Yeah, I can actually just say something that we've been trying to think about as we apply for grants and things is how can we provide more services for programs like ours. So something that we do are CPR training. So just really thinking of like the robust amount of services and needs and skills that we already have in the industry and how we can continue to serve ourselves and make sure that our providers are also the professionals and practitioners that are leading the classes. But thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions on stuff we presented or maybe stuff we didn't present that you want to make sure we have a chance to talk about today?
I have one more question.
Absolutely. Oh,
How long,
great, go ahead.
sorry, how
No, no.
long is the estimated time for completion of the 16? Is it like a year program, 2 years? Sorry.
Sorry, for which 16?
For the 16 credits? You're talking about
Yes.
the foundation
Yes.
certificate.
Oh, yeah.
I think if we look at the trends in terms of how our early educators are taking courses through career pathways, it really depends on the individual. Some take 3 credits at a time, others 6, but it is designed for those that are working in the field. So I think what the benefit will be is a couple of things. One is that the foundational certificate, because it's offered in the same sequence and in the same structure at all colleges, it will also enhance the experience that the educator has in connecting to the college and really leveraging the wraparound supports that will be available. In the past, educators, we saw that they would jump around from institution to institution and take courses in different places. Our goal is that they make a strong connection to the institution and feel the support, develop relationships with the faculty and the grant directors, and then also have that support if they decide to pursue a degree. But it really the ideal is that those sequence of courses is offered every semester so that there won't be stopgaps for an educator who decides to pursue something more rapidly, but also will be available for those that need a little more time.
Thanks. Heidi?
Yeah, I love all of this work. I think it's going to be incredibly helpful and continue to help us professionalize the field and move forward. It was encouraging to hear how out of school time educators are not going to have the same type of credential as center-based early learning, recognizing that family childcare is very different as after school. One thing that I sort of wonder about, and it's more of something, I guess, to think about, is I don't think a lot of high school seniors or current high school students at all recognize that there are these types of options or opportunities. I actually have talked to some graduating seniors who had no idea about the scholarship. And when I told them about that, they didn't work in my organization and they were just absolutely floored and so excited. And so I sort of wonder about ways to, that we might be able to connect with high schools, especially the high schools that do not have the early learning programs, like a lot of the tech high schools do and things like that. So more of the traditional high schools. And I'm not sure how to do that. It was more just, they don't know and they should know because we want them to work for us.
I think that's a good point. And I can just say that we have had ongoing meetings with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed We've talked a lot about the Chapter 74 and vocational programs, but also recognize there are many of our traditional high schools also have dual enrollment and are offering early childhood education, the child growth and development course, while the students are still in high school. They can take that credit with them. But I think that ongoing communication with DESE and making sure that high schools are aware of some of those things. The other piece that was really helpful for Sarah Cian and myself was that we meet with the Department of Higher Ed just about every other week. And there were other, the ECE scholarship is really for those that are working in the field. But what's important to note is that there's also another, there are 2 other scholarships that are available for high school students that are interested in pursuing education as full-time students. And so I think, you know, as we work with the Department of Higher Ed and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, bringing those 2 things together to make sure students are aware of those scholarship opportunities. Good point.
Yeah, and this high school that I was talking about does not have dual enrollment. It does not meet those requirements. So the basically kids can't take child growth and development when they're in high school unless they get networked or connected separately.
Yeah,
Right.
I just keep feeling, I feel like this is attached to something that I keep feeling like we are not selling all the scholarship opportunities as a recruitment tool as well as we could be in the field.
Without a doubt. And I think especially in out of school time where we have so many of that, that's the bulk of our workforce is that younger professionals. And if we can connect them when they're young, maybe we can keep them longer.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions or requests or comments, we're going to give you 14 minutes back.
Thank
All
you,
right.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone. And we'll be in touch soon. And Addison will get the slides out to everyone. And we'll look forward to seeing you in various locations. I think I have a regular standing engagement on the 9:30 call on the Thursday morning after the board meeting. So I know I'll see many of you there as well. Okay. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.